Hi, Jason. How are you?
I'm good, thanks for us. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Welcome to Drag and Drop. It's a pleasure to have you as a guest.
Thank you very much. No, I'm looking forward to it. I've seen a lot of the podcasts you've been before, so it feels like a bit famous if I'm going to be in one. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
No, thank you for, it was obviously Max brought you to my attention, which I've known for a while, and he said you'd be a great person to speak to in regards to Mendix. So when I looked you up, I thought I agreed with what he said. So now it's a
Brilliant.
pleasure to have you. It'd be good to start with for those who, I think probably a lot of people in the Mendix ecosystem in the UK may know you, but out of that, it'd be good to have a bit of introduction about yourself.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. Well, yeah, hopefully Max has given you correct information, and no, I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully I don't let you down. No, I've worked in IT since about 2020. I started in a consultancy firm called Fox IT, where I was on the help desk, because a lot of people start. Moved into
Yeah.
change management, so I did IT change. Moved to another few firms, but then ended up at PwC as a change manager. There's such a broad variety of things you can do within PwC. I had many different roles. Going from change management, I then got heavily involved in ServiceNow. So I onboarded
Yep.
ServiceNow for change and release modules for UK and US. From there, I liked ServiceNow so much, I became a ServiceNow champion, trying to show the business the capabilities, how it can help deliver, change their processes from being email driven, as most of them were, or using calendars to try and create simple workflows. And from there, I got approached by leadership to start working in Mendix, which at the time I hadn't heard of. But from there, I built up a very successful community within the firm. A centre of excellence, also created a community of practice. And from there, it really went from strength to strength over the years. And I'm now, successful app factory there, delivering, multiple apps every year now. Also within that space was heavily involved in AI. Was an AI innovator for the firm. I think everyone needs to be now. But
Yes.
also quite involved with Power Apps. So sort of the Power Platform and
Yeah.
Mendix worked very closely together. So I was leading Mendix, guy that I was working very closely, leading Power Platform, trying to work out where each one would fit in, where their sweet spot was. So yeah, a lot of experience. And most recently, as I said, it was ended up as the Mendix Platform Lead.
Amazing. And with Mendix, obviously you're asked to look at it. I'm interested to know what was your initial, obviously you're ServiceNow champion and you're now having to look into another platform, right? And usually I kind of, with these tech stacks, especially, I find usually it's like your football team. You're not going to change. You don't want to change, right? So what kind of drew you to Mendix? What was your initial kind of, opinion of it, and what drew you to Mendix?
I love you pointing around the football team, because you see I've got my Liverpool mug here.
Yeah, I saw that. I might have to cancel the call.
But it is like that. Yeah, you do feel like, well, team service now. And it was very much like that. But I think what I found very quickly was that they do different things, and they're both great at doing what they do. ServiceNow as an enterprise application to deliver everything from HR to, onboarding, whatever you want it to do within ServiceNow. At Mendix, I found, you could use it to do that, but I thought the sweet spot for that was really in delivering complex applications as a challenger to Procode, where I sort of see ServiceNow as being sort of an entry from a low-code perspective, sort of entry level, where you can create simple workflows, minimize the admin that you need around tasks. You can do handoffs to different people to get approvals and the like. And obviously it was originally built, and when we onboarded it, was around the IT service management side of things. But it shouldn't be limited to that, because there's a lot of business processes that it can support as well. But what I saw immediately with Mendix was, the fact you can host it anywhere, the fact you can go with more complex applications, it's the repeatable, reusable nature of the modules you can create as well for a marketplace. I just saw it was a completely different animal. And if you like, one became my football team and one became my rugby team. So I was able to support both of them at the same time.
Nice. A good answer. Good answer. You obviously spoke about you built, a Mendix COE and a community of practice as well. What were the most important steps, in setting those up successfully? Because obviously it's not easy to do that.
No, I think there was a few trial and error. I will admit it was a case of I was given quite limited resources to start with. So I wanted to recruit. But one thing we did internally was we would get people involved who maybe were tech savvy but not developers, through to actual developers. And it was a real mix there, because I think to start with, we went slightly down the citizen developer route, which I think was not a good way to go in hindsight. I think advice I would give people now is the most important thing is the people you're getting in there. Working within a Mendix space and a COE, COP, there's lots of change going on. You need to not be set fast in what you want and how you think things are going to be turned out, because on a daily basis, they might change. And that might just be from the product team delivering an application right the way through to you using things. You know, there's releases coming through in Mendix all the time as well that upgrade and change the way things go. But the most important things I'd say with setting them up would be getting the right people and a variety of people, not just developers, but UX designers, BAs, and other people that just understand how things are going to work to sort of build that product team. And then I think getting the governance in place and security. You know, one of the things when we were first building applications, we probably didn't think about the security side as much as we should. And now Mendix, you know, you can build in the app, server, platform, hosting. There's multiple places to be adding it in. And I think that's one thing that really needs to be involved at the beginning. Think of a strategy. Where do you want to get to? What's the end point? How do you want to deliver? And then you can build the governance to help you get there. I think that's a better way to do it. But first thing is getting the right people involved to go on that journey with you.
Yeah. And speaking about, you know, citizen developers, you know, I'm keen to kind of touch on that point, because obviously I've interviewed people who've come from total crazy backgrounds and then come and become a developer, right? You know, what were the challenges? Because, you know, I feel, you know, obviously I think a traditional developer can pick up things quicker and understand things quicker, you know, but also I think at the same time, you probably found experienced talent was hard to find in the UK. From our experience, I'm assuming you probably went through the same thing. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think two routes to that, because we already had some experienced developers within the firm, but they were mostly doing other things.
Yeah.
But I managed to get a couple to come and support, actually a couple that had worked on ServiceNow previously, and they found between the two very simple, actually. And then there were some that had not done any development at all, and we got involved. And there was obviously quite a steep learning curve to start with. But I think comparing ServiceNow and Mendix, sort of the way you go with a citizen developer or a non-developer training program, I think ServiceNow is a steep learning curve, but it gets to a point where it's relatively simple to do the building service requests, etc. Whereas with Mendix, is obviously you get to that. It's quite simple to start with. You go through the training, do the academies. You know, I've done the RAD certification myself to sort of understand how it should work. Then after that, I think it does open up, and obviously you've got the open source coding, you can do Java add-ons. So I think that's where it changes a bit. And to have the way that a developer would normally build the security around an app and the methodical processes they go to, I think are very helpful in defining the governance that you want around building an app, the steps you should go through. But I think when you've worked with an experienced developer to create that, generate it, and then share it, then it's relatively simple for someone to come in and learn it and then follow those learnings from the developers that have come in. But you're absolutely right. There weren't many Mendix developers around at the time. So we actually used some third parties to come and support us, help upskill our internal resources and get to that point where they were then trusted to be able to deliver. And then it was like a conveyor belt cycle moving on. So they would then train new starters. Often we get the graduates coming in and working with them, and they might well come in as Java developer or Python, and they're, I don't know, it's maybe look down a bit at at low code, but then they'd actually see what Mendix can do, understand its capabilities, and see they can make add-ons, you know, add code to it themselves. And I think that perception sort of changed when they'd seen what it could do.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I was going to ask, obviously bringing in graduates who have studied Java, Python, all these, you know, traditional software for 3-4 years in university, and then you're telling them to drag and drop. You know what I mean? It's you know what's this, right? And you know, even in our experience when we're recruiting, it is always harder to recruit someone from traditional for a low code role, right? And I think it's like you said, they need to actually play with it, then make their mind up. You know, because a lot of them, they'll have this skepticism, but they haven't actually tried it, right? And and you know, you touched on Mendix and Power Apps, and a lot of them probably have Power Apps in their mind, but Mendix offers a lot more than Power Apps. It's not the same low code style.
Exactly. I think when you talk of low code, there is an immediate perception that it is all drag and drop and click and it's done. Whereas, you know, we know from working with Mendix, for example, it offers so much more. You know, if it was just the low code side, and to be fair, even Power Apps is a lot more than that. But if you wanted to build a very simple templated application, you could do that in Power Apps quite easily. You know, the comparison that I always look at is if you're building something within a Microsoft ecosystem, it's quite simple. There's not really any integrations. Complexity is relatively low. There's no external users. Power Apps is a perfectly good fit for you. But if you're looking at delivering something that needs to be scalable in the future, you need to host it somewhere other than Azure. You need external users, unknown external users, or it's of a complexity level where you have multiple integrations that don't have the pre-built connectors in Power Apps. So Mendix is the one to go. So I sort of see it as a step up where you'd have ServiceNow, the basic service request type of thing. Then you'd sort of step up a bit more complex into Power Apps, Power Platform, one more up into Mendix. And then finally you'd sort of go to the Pro Code if you got to the limits of what Mendix could deliver.
Yeah. And I'm interested to know what's, some of the biggest challenges, organizations are facing when trying to adopt Mendix, widely, and how do you, advise them to overcome that?
Funny, I think it's, again, the people. It's a perception of, we wouldn't trust Mendix to use for this application, for example. So I think a lot of what we've done was to showcase what it can do. And that was both internally, but also speaking to other partners and users of Mendix. And you see that they've done industry grade manufacturing applications. That's great. But you think, well, does it really matter if that's not that secure, if it's an internal app?
Yeah.
So then you look at other companies that have built banking applications, like ABN AMRO we've spoken to quite a lot over the time. We know the sort of apps that they've delivered. And then we move on to actually showcasing apps that we can build, deliver them more quickly than you could in Pro Code, show the fact that they are secure and being created in a similar way they would have done in Pro Code, and they've been delivered successfully on time, on schedule. Then it's a great showcase then and a stepping stone for further applications. But I think a lot of it was from maybe leadership where there's a drive down the Microsoft route. Well, can't we just use it for everything? Power Apps, Power Platform, and it's explaining that, well, no, because there is a limit to what you can do. And similarly with Pro Code, well, can't we just use that? Well, no, it's normally slower, more expensive, etc., more skilled developers, whatever the reason is. So I think it is, again, sort of the mindset of that organizational activity to onboard Mendix and get that accepted for using it.
Yeah. And talking about, obviously the Power Apps one is something that I hear about a lot. But what other kind of misconceptions do you hear from these customers about low code and kind of being against it?
So I think a lot of it is around, if they want to use Pro Code, it's a proper app. If it's not using Pro Code, it's not a proper app. It is not delivered in the right way. And another ones are, well, AI is coming now. And if you've got AI with Pro Code, what do you need low code for? It's interesting because I've looked into this a lot myself because it is a very valid question. AI is coming along. We all know it's here now. It is changing the way we work and the way we develop. But I think the biggest difference for me at the moment, if you were to look at Mendix and Maya, Mendix AI Assist, as I'm sure most people would know, at the moment that makes suggestions for you. It looks at good practice. It's ensuring you're doing things the right way. And it's even got to the stage now where you can take a photo, submit it, and it'll create a piece of code based upon that. What we want to get to is natural language app development. So you'd say, build me an app that does this, and this, and it goes away and builds it. The difference I see between what Mendix can do and what Pro Code would do, if I go and ask ChatGPT or another AI solution a question, it would tell me one answer one day, another answer the next day, and on like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm building it within the guardrails of what Mendix can offer, I know it's going to be built in the same way. It's going to be repeatable. It's going to be secure in the way that I'd want it to be. So I think having that limitation and probably giving me peace of mind and insurance, it's going to be built in a way that is secure. Obviously, you'd validate it. But that's where I would see would be the main difference between them.
Yeah. And in regards to, the community of, of practice that you built, what's kind of, what role does that play in scaling Mendix, and why should other kind of businesses look at doing that?
Yeah. So I sort of saw it and it's interesting, people may call them different names, Center of Excellence, a COP as community of practice, you said, or they're actually different for me at the time. And the COE that I had was effectively the app factory. So that was the delivery. So they would be the ones delivering the applications. That'd be made up of developers, UX designers, testers, product managers. They would form the group of the COE, and the COP would be a wider community. So they would be business sponsors effectively. So they may be a tech leader in a particular line of service, where I would get a leadership team to help me drive the use of Mendix throughout the firm. So what's the strategy for using Mendix? What should we be using it for? why should we use Mendix instead of something else for a particular type of delivery? And that's where we would take along showcasing of applications, demo what we've done. This is something we've built, we think it'd be useful. Or we've built these reusable modules now and put them in marketplace. These can be used. So it's really a case of getting people to evangelize the use of Mendix throughout the firm. And I couldn't be everywhere to talk to everyone who had a question about Mendix. And I'd hear so many myths of, are we going to renew? How long are we going on for? What's the agreement? What can we build? So having other people sort of front line to be able to deal with these was a big part of that. And, we built up a community of well over 100 people. And what I tried to do was bring in people who may be using Mendix and then some who may not be, but they want to learn more about it. And with that, I brought in other territories as well. They may be using other low-code solutions, but it's good to understand, well, why are you using that? What are the benefits of it? Because however good we think Mendix might be or other low-code solutions, I never want to feel that I'm blinkered and I'm not open to the fact that there may be better solutions for what you're trying to deliver.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm interested to know, on an awareness side, in the UK, how did you find on the customer side the awareness of Mendix? Was there a lot of people that when you went in, they were like, I've never heard of them, or was it very much well known?
No, it was a lot of people that weren't aware of it actually.
Yeah.
Similar to myself when I was first told about it, I was like, Mendix, what's this? And I looked it up and, obviously saw a big company and obviously since been bought by Siemens and they've invested so much money in it. But yeah, there was a lot of people. And I think that's one of the issues is that everyone knows Microsoft. So everyone then, because of that, knows Power Apps and Power Platform. So I think Mendix comes along sometimes and people, well, why do we need that? But there's so many organizations now that I've worked with and had conversations with that have both of them in parallel. And I think they do complement each other in the way that they can deliver. Horses for courses, what's the best fit for this app that we're going to build? And as long as you've got an appropriate architectural review when that's going through, I think that's absolutely key just to ensure that you are using the right technology for what you're trying to deliver.
Yeah. And, in regards to, like what governance models or best practices, are essential when you're scaling across multiple business units?
Yeah. So coming back to the citizen developer piece, and I think this was, again, one of the things we did slightly wrong, but we didn't let it get too far out of hands. It wasn't too bad. We let people have a play, basically. So that was okay. But I think what you need to ensure is you do have a stage gate to go through at a point to make sure the app has been built in an appropriate manner. And to supplement that, we would have the governance around, developer notes, how to build this, what should you be building it, what the steps you go through. So effectively what I did was I went through a chronological order from someone has an idea they want to be delivered right through to handing over that idea. And that went through all of the internal review processes, ensuring you got financial sign off, make sure it's approved for the right technology. And at that point, it would start, right, it's now agreed to go in Mendix. Now what do we do? And it's at that point, you'd stand up the team, assign the team, you'd ensure everything was in place. You'd then have to have a license requested, which would go through the Mendix platform.
Yeah.
So I would always be the one to approve that. At that point, I'd ensure, right, have you gone through your onboarding? Have you spoken to tech risk? Is it something that's approved? What do you need to do with data? So we'd make sure everything was in place. So we effectively abided by the company's internal policies, but I was sort of a stage gate to ensure that had been done, which with the citizen side of things, if they're not coming to me to ask for licenses and it's free for all, then you're never going to get that, that step in the process. So that was something we learned pretty quickly. And even down to the fact, I won't say who, but some of the first suppliers that supported us, the apps weren't built in as secure a manner as I wanted them to have been. No XPath constraints. It was sort of limited down to roles and the roles were too open. And I think when we were referring before about a pro code developer coming to Mendix or a technical resource starting to develop, that's the piece where they really add value, a pro code developer that can help upskill to ensure you do have XPath constraints set up, that roles are limited to the right user base and they can only do what they're supposed to be doing and they can only see what they're supposed to be doing. So that was probably a big part of that. But yeah, I think that's the governance around that is ensuring that you have governance that's regularly updated, regularly reviewed, and that it's shared out with everybody. And I think the community of practice is a very good way to do that and ensure everyone's aware of it.
Yeah. And then how did you strike the balance between delivering applications quickly and ensuring, long-term compliance and maintainability?
Yeah. And I think that's the key question, isn't it? Around, because everyone thinks low code quick. And then you said, well, it is quick, but it's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be a while.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think the main thing we did was have those robust processes in place that everyone knew. it was keeping a team together that would then learn the steps to go through. So a lot of companies will have, a BA over here, a product manager over there. They might have a BA resource who's coming in who's never worked on Mendix before, but they know how to be a BA. I found it's much better to try and keep a team together that understood Mendix, what its capabilities were and how you could deliver. Keep that team together, make sure you've got those governance processes that they're then aware of and they're going to follow through. And probably the most important thing that we built on was our portfolio of marketplace modules. So we would have what we call digital assets. So you may have an invoicing system or a claims management system that were pre-built. So you could go and speak to a client within an hour and say, look, this is the base platform. This is generally what it would look like, but we'd add your branding to it, any different configuration you'd need. And having that tanned immediately was a great starting point. In addition to that, we'd also have a starter template for any bespoke applications, and we'd already have the SSO module in there. We'd already have the company branding requirements. So having these pre-built components that would often take a week to 2 weeks to build from scratch really sped up development even faster. I know when we started with Mendix, it was saying, oh, you can build it 4 times faster. Well, at some point they changed that to 10 times faster. But in reality, you can make it as fast as you want by how many of these modules you want to build. So in the end, the starter template had, I think, like 5 core components that were always there. And then in addition to that, we had another 25 modules that were a marketplace that you could just add into the applications as and when needed. So I think that really gave me the reassurance that apps were being built in a secure, appropriate manner, but also gave that increased speed to delivery.
And then earlier you touched on, obviously, AI is the hot topic, everyone's last two plus years, that's the conversation, right? And leaders, developers, everyone's talking about it. Obviously, Mendix as a platform, adding features, Maya and things like that. I'm interested to know, how do you see the Mendix? And I know there's, it's forever. There's updates coming out all the time, right? Every month they're announcing things, How do you see things evolving? And, do you, like you said, there's this thing about, why don't I just use traditional with AI, versus low code with AI? What's your kind of opinion on that?
So I think, ultimately, who knows, 10, 20 years, but I certainly see, you never know, dear. I see within the next sort of 3 to 5 years, I really see that the next step in the evolution of delivering applications is the natural language requests going into low code solutions like Mendix. So as I touched on before, with Maya at the moment, it will tell me if I'm doing something stupid. It'll make a suggestion for me if I get stuck. And it'll even create a table based upon something I submit. But if I say to Maya at the moment, can you create me an application that, does X, Y, and Z? It's not yet at the stage to do that. The next evolution I would see is being able to do that. And then I think stepping on from that, if you think of the way you can have a conversation with an AI solution like ChatGPT, there are others out there. If you add a question, a prompt, you can then supplement that with additional prompts. So I see the way, can you build me an app that does this? Oh, by the way, can you add security and create these roles? I need to be able to see this. Or can you enable me to update data in this format? And you can keep adding to it and supplement it. So that's the way I sort of see it in the sort of short to medium term. I think longer term is where the sort of questions do come in a bit more around what AI can do with pro code. But Cursor AI and other solutions like that now sort of making a name for themselves. I think for the reasons I explained earlier, I do still think because of the guardrails that are set by low code, it still makes it safer to use and a better option, certainly at the moment. But yeah, I think that's probably the main difference and why I would think that there's still a long life left in low code like Mendix for the time being.
It's interesting. Like you said, right? Who knows? Who knows what will happen, right? Things are changing and evolving so fast, with AI. And I think obviously there's more businesses failing than succeeding. So I think there's a long learning curve ahead for everybody, not just Mendix. Like obviously Mendix can go off what they know and think is going to
proven track record,
be the future, but
trusted. And if you think, if I was talking to you 10, 15 years ago, we would assume that there would be lots of driverless cars by now, but
that's true.
It's very limited because of all the issues they've come across. Who's to say that's not going to happen when you're trying to develop apps in pro code using AI as well?
Yeah, exactly. And, could you share, a project or a use case, where, obviously without mentioning names and things like that, a customer, a project which made a real significant impact where, it was kind of, show the true value of Mendix.
Yeah. So I think it's actually one I've sort of touched on before around digital asset piece, but it would be a claims management app that we built where there wasn't, I don't think, a true belief by the senior leadership that you could deliver an app in Mendix that could deliver a robust, scalable application to deliver a claims management system. Problems being, we would sell the app to a customer or a client, and then they would have their customers logging in to submit their claims or find out information about what they were able to claim on. And I think a lot with that, yes, you could, for example, you couldn't use Power Apps for this because the licensing issue around using Power Platform products.
Yeah.
You could license the client, but then how do you license the customers that are logging into that? And that would be the issue. So Mendix stood out there as the option to use. Then there was a question around, well, is it robust enough to handle this? It would be a bad PR mistake if anything was to go wrong. And we investigated around and spoke to banks, as I said, and other insurance companies who use it heavily for client solutions, external solutions. And what we were able to do, based upon the investigation we carried out and then demonstrating the fact that it had been built, it had delivered, it was robust, it was scalable, we were then able to use that as a digital asset and deliver to multiple clients. So I think that was a really breakthrough point for us, that from the C-suite level, they saw what the capabilities were of Mendix at the point that we're not limited to just doing internal simple applications. And that's why it does stand apart from what Power Apps can do, because it gives that capability to deliver the more complex, robust, externally facing applications.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people I speak to, they say that, most customers will start small with something internal.
Yeah.
It's always start small and then scale, because you actually realize, oh, wow, this could actually do a lot more than what the thing I was skeptical about is actually not the case.
No, it sort of blows your mind, started. And we were similar in the fact we signed an agreement started for one app. We did that one app, we built it. It was supposed to be sort of the size you'd fit on a napkin, but it ended up being the size of a tablecloth by the time we'd finished with it. And shouldn't really have built it in Mendix in hindsight, but the success of that led us to a 10 app agreement. And then we filled that within a year, and then we went to enterprise. So we had unlimited apps. And I think that flexibility then allows you to switch between, well, what's the best technology to use to deliver this application, not what's the cheapest one to do. So having that set up and, multiple low code options took the costing out of it effectively, because say they cost similar. And then from there, you're just looking, well, what's actually the best technical fit for me to deliver this in? Because that's what I want. And you're absolutely right. It's gaining that confidence and trust in what you're building, firstly for yourself, but then actually for the rest of the most important people within your company, to ensure that they are also on board with how it's working and the safety of what's being delivered. Also the client experience, of course. And I think that's another thing Mendix allows you to do, is you can create a UI that looks like anything you want it to. Whereas other solutions may be a bit limited in what it allows you to do in building a fully bespoke.
And if I'm tasked with this, if I'm someone today who has, my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, we're going to look at Mendix. The plan is to eventually build a COE." As someone who's done it, what advice would you give to someone tasked with doing that?
So, well, I think, first of all, it is a challenge, but it's a very enjoyable challenge. When I went through and did it, I learned so much on the first time that probably wouldn't do again. But I think the main things are, where do you want to get to? What do you want to use Mendix for? I think would be a big question mark, whether it's Mendix or another low code capability. What do you want to achieve by investing in this? Is it a low code solution that you want to have citizen developers on, building internal applications? Do you want to be building external apps, massive levels to different clients? And I think that's one of the things to try and understand to start with. And then again, as I touched on before, I think it's really about getting the right people in around you. How fast do you want to scale this app factory or center of excellence? And I think it's ensuring you've got the right governance, ensuring you've got all the processes in place, and then you've got the people in there that you can trust to follow those. And you've got a team that are up for change, because there will be a lot of swivels and 180s on the way through as to what's being done. But I really think it's about ensuring you've got the right people, you've got the right culture. If you're going from pro code based to low code, it is really about ensuring that people trust that culture change as well.
Yeah.
It's not just about doing things quickly. Yes, that helps, and that's what everyone wants, but it's ensuring that doing them in the right way as well.
Yeah, a lot of people say obviously as quick as you can build an app, that's as quick as you can ruin an app,
Yeah.
right? You can kind of, make as many mistakes just as quick in low code. It's not just all about speed.
No, exactly that. And I think that's it. As I said, I think some of the things we did start with, it was right. How quick can we build it? It wasn't how quick can we build it right, which is actually the question that you should be asking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you touched on kind of your views on where you see low code going, but for you personally, you're not at PwC anymore. You've left. Can you tell me about your plans, what you're looking for to do going forward?
I'd really love to do what sort of challenged me recently and I've enjoyed, and that was leading a low code team. I'd love to come in at the point of someone's trying to scale the delivery of their low code capability, be that in Mendix or Power Apps. But Mendix is what I've done a lot of recently. I know it the best.
Yeah.
But I think coming in to try and initiate that from scratch, or coming in to take it to another level, that'd be an ideal placement for me upcoming. I've really enjoyed the buzz you get from delivering apps to people, and apps that you're proud of when you deliver them as well. It's not just a case of throwing it over the fence and here's your app. It's a case of, you are really proud of it. And the fact that you build it in the right manner then enables you, as I said before, for that repeat build, the reusability of the components that you've created. If you do it right first time, it allows you so much more down the line. So yeah, I'm really looking for a role to step back into that space, ideally a Mendix COE or platform lead, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you speaking to me, Jason. It was a pleasure talking to you and hearing, your journey, what you've done at PwC. And I'm sure, wherever you go next, your skill set will be valued with, what you've done, because I think, more and more businesses are looking at the COE model. And I think it's what's recommended by low code platforms, right? It's, try and build their own COE. So, it makes sense to hire someone who's got experience doing that. So, appreciate you sharing all your insights with me.
Brilliant. No, thanks a lot for the opportunity, Froz. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, I like talking to like-minded people who know what we're talking about and go through something that obviously
exactly, yeah.
excites
It's a lot
both
more
of us in the same way. As sad as we are, but it's really enjoyable to have a chat about it. So yeah, thanks very much for having me on.
No problem. Thanks, Jason.
Cheers, Froz. Take care.